line is Rod McKenzie, Managing Director of Policy at the Road Haulage Association. Hello, Rod.
Hi, Vanessa.
So we hear about the money being laid by to help us all out in the event of a no-deal Brexit. It's quite a lot of money, isn't it? 2.1 billion, a total of 6 billion laid aside to help out. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's something, isn't it? And it's welcome that the government is doing something, because we've been looking the last 2 years at precious little organisation by the government, precious little communication by the government, and great confusion among business about what is required if there is a no-deal Brexit, and we suddenly have to do all these unfamiliar things like fill in customs forms. So we're getting down the line a little bit, but still a long way to go.
And what are you able to tell your hauliers to expect? How are you able to gear up for a potential no-deal Brexit? Although, of course, that's not guaranteed.
Well, we still don't have the detail of what we need to do, and that's one of the big issues. I'll try and give listeners some sort of an idea. A lorry, let's say coming from the continent to the UK, can have anything up to 13,000 individual shipments on them. They might be packages for you or me or whatever you like. Now, as an example, a lorry with 2,000 different consignments on board will require a different piece of form filling for each one of those, which would take about 165 hours of staff time for the data entry. Now, that doesn't make sense. And it'll be, that is where the talk of delays at Dover and chaos in the supply chain, that's where it comes from. And what we want is something very similar to what the French have, which is where haulier declarations link with the licence plate of the lorry when transporting the cargo. And that would be much simpler, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that sounds very sensible, doesn't it?
That's what we want the government to do.
And how do you go about petitioning the government to try and bring that kind of future about?
Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing.
That's you, is it? That's your job?
We've written to Michael Gove suggesting this because, the priority here is very simple. All of us are affected by this. Without lorries, you get nothing. We must maximise the number of freight vehicles that can cross the border quickly to ensure the supply chain that you and I and everyone else relies on is reliant and it can continue.
As I'm sure you know, Rod, we have many, many lorry drivers listening to this programme right now. So they will have been, I'm sure, just as disconcerted as they already are to hear you say nobody really knows exactly what form the preparation should take. So what message would you like to give to them?
Well, one of the things we're really worried about, and I'd say to any lorry driver listening to this, is your welfare, because very little has been done by the government to ensure what we would describe as simple welfare, which is a loo, somewhere to eat, somewhere perhaps to have a wash. So the government talks about sort of holding areas here, there and everywhere in the kind of Kent area. But as far as we can see, very little has been done to provide lorry drivers with the basic human amenities that the rest of us would take for granted. But it seems that lorry drivers are somehow down the government's list of priorities, and that's wrong.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Rod McKenzie, Managing Director of Policy at the Road Haulage Association.